Welcome back, and thank you for being here tonight. Settle in, get comfortable, and let your body sink into wherever you're resting. Tonight, we're going to travel together to a moment in time that changed everything. 66 million years ago, on a warm spring afternoon, the world the dinosaurs had ruled for 165 million years came to an end. But this isn't a story about violence or terror. This is a story about a single day, a quiet morning, the last sunrise of an age. We'll walk slowly through that day together, from dawn until twilight, watching a world that didn't know what was coming. So close your eyes if you'd like, take a slow breath, and let yourself drift back with me to the very last day of the dinosaurs. We want to thank you for supporting us, and it would mean so much if you could support the channel by leaving a like and subscribing to help us keep this channel going. Anyways, back to the video. Let's begin our journey not with the ending, but with the world as it was. Picture, if you will, a planet that has known dinosaurs for so long that they have become as ordinary to it as trees and rivers. 165 million years. That is the span we're talking about. Try to let that number settle in your mind. All of human history, every story ever told around a fire, every empire that has risen and fallen, every word spoken in every language, all of that fits into a tiny sliver of time so brief it would barely register on the calendar of dinosaur dominance. The Earth, 66 million years ago, was warm. Wonderfully, gloriously warm. There were no polar ice caps. The oceans lapped at coastlines higher than they are today. Forests grew at the poles. Palms swayed in places that would one day become Alaska and Siberia. The whole planet seemed to have settled into a long, breathing rhythm of greenness and abundance. The continents were arranged differently than they are now. North America was split in two by a great inland sea called the Western Interior Seaway, a warm, shallow ocean that ran from the Gulf of Mexico all the way up to the Arctic. To its east lay a long, narrow continent called Appalachia. To its west lay a larger landmass called Laramidia, a long ribbon of land stretching from what would become Alaska down to Mexico. Across the planet, India was still a wandering island, drifting slowly toward the great body of Asia. Australia and Antarctica were still connected, both still green, both still home to forests and creatures that walked beneath their canopies. The air itself was different. Warmer, yes, but also richer in carbon dioxide, which kept the world humid and lush. There was more oxygen than today in some calculations, less in others, but either way the atmosphere felt thick and alive. Clouds drifted high and slow. Storms swept across vast plains that had never known the plough. The world breathed in long, easy rhythms, untouched by anything that could truly threaten it. And in that world the dinosaurs ruled, not as tyrants, not as monsters, simply as the inheritors of an Earth they had shaped and been shaped by for an unimaginable stretch of time. They were not strange to their world, they were their world. Every river had its waders, every forest had its browsers, every plain had its herds, every shore had its hunters. In what is now Montana, vast herds of triceratops moved slowly through the open woodlands and along the edges of broad rivers. They were enormous animals, some weighing as much as 12 tons, with 3 great horns and a wide, bony frill that swept back from their skulls like a shield. They lived in family groups, the older ones leading, the young ones close to their mother's flanks. They grazed on low ferns and tough cycads, on the woody undergrowth of the great conifer forests that stretched from horizon to horizon. They were peaceful, mostly. Their armour and their horns were enough to keep most predators at a respectful distance. Above the herds, in the high branches of the conifer trees, small mammals went about their quiet lives. They were the size of mice and shrews, mostly nocturnal, mostly burrowers, mostly forgettable. They had been living in the shadow of the dinosaurs for 160 million years, and they had grown very good at staying out of the way. They scurried among the roots of the great trees, ate insects and seeds, raised their tiny young in tiny burrows, and generally went unnoticed. No one watching this world would have guessed that these small, soft, unremarkable creatures would one day inherit everything. In the rivers and along the marshes, crocodiles and turtles slid through the warm water. They were not so different from their modern descendants. They had already perfected their forms millions of years earlier, and they would carry those forms through the coming catastrophe almost unchanged. They lived alongside fish that have entire families still alive today, gar and sturgeon and bowfin, ancient lineages that even then were already old. In the great inland sea, monsters swam. Mosasaurs, huge marine reptiles with paddle-shaped limbs and crocodile-like skulls, hunted through the warm water. Some of them grew to 50 feet long, longer than a city bus. They were the apex predators of that ancient ocean, alongside the last of the plesiosaurs, with their long necks and small heads, drifting through the kelp like graceful ghosts. Sharks patrolled the deeper waters. Ammonites, those beautiful spiral-shelled relatives of squid and octopus, drifted in countless numbers through the currents. The seas were full. They had been full for so long that fullness was simply how seas were supposed to be. Above the trees, pterosaurs soared. Not the small nimble pterosaurs of earlier ages, but giants. The largest of them, Quetzalcoatlus, had a wingspan of over 35 feet, larger than a small airplane. They stood on the ground like enormous storks, walking on all fours when they were not in the air, their long beaks pointed at the ground as they searched for small creatures to swallow. When they took flight, they did so with a gentle leap and a slow, powerful beat of their leathery wings. They could glide for hours, riding the thermals across vast distances, watching the world below from heights no other creature could reach. And among the herds, in the forests, in the wetlands, walked the most famous of all the dinosaurs, Tyrannosaurus rex, the tyrant lizard king. By the Late Cretaceous, T-Rex had become the dominant predator of western North America. They were enormous, the largest of them weighing over 9 tons, with skulls 4 feet long and teeth the size of bananas. Their bite force was the strongest of any land animal that has ever lived. They could crush bone. They could shear through flesh and tendon as easily as scissors through paper. And yet, for all that power, they were not constantly hunting. They were not constantly raging. Most of their time, like most predators, was spent resting, walking, watching, sleeping in the shade of the great trees. They were animals, ordinary in their world, and that world was their home. There were many other dinosaurs in this world too. Edmontosaurus, the great duck-billed herbivores moving in herds of thousands. Ankylosaurus, the armoured tank with its club tail and its bone-plated back. Pachycephalosaurus, the dome-headed dinosaur that some scientists think used its thick skull for ramming contests with rivals. Smaller theropods, swift and bird-like, hunting in packs through the underbrush. Tiny alvarezsaurids, with their single-clawed fingers, breaking into termite mounds. Dromaeosaurs, sleek and intelligent with their sickle claws and their feathered bodies, more like birds than the popular imagination has ever quite been able to accept. And birds themselves were here too. True birds, by this point. Some of them looked very much like the birds we know today. Others were stranger, with teeth in their beaks, with claws on their wings, with long tails that had not yet shortened into the fans of modern birds. They flew through the canopies of the conifer forests. They picked at the fruits of the early flowering plants. They were already a quiet success story, though no one would have noticed yet. Flowering plants, that is something worth pausing on. By the Late Cretaceous, flowers had finally appeared on Earth. They had taken their time. For most of the dinosaur era, the world had been green but not colourful. Conifers and ferns and cycads and ginkgos had ruled the forests, all of them quietly windblown in their reproduction. But in the last 40 million years before the end, flowering plants had emerged and begun to spread. By 66 million years ago, they were everywhere. Magnolias bloomed in the swamps. Early relatives of oaks and maples spread their leaves through the woodlands. There were even early relatives of grasses, though true grasslands were still tens of millions of years in the future. The world was not yet as colourful as it would become, but it was beginning to bloom. This was the world. This was Earth at the height of its long Mesozoic summer. Warm, green, abundant, ancient. A world that had been so stable for so long that it seemed impossible anything could change it. The dinosaurs had survived everything that the planet had thrown at them. They had survived volcanic episodes. They had survived sea level changes. They had survived shifting continents and changing climates. They had become, by every measure that nature uses, a complete success. And on the morning we were about to visit, the morning that would become the last day, none of them suspected anything was wrong. Why would they? Nothing was wrong. The sun rose as it always did, the forests breathed as they always had, the rivers ran, the herds grazed, the pterosaurs took flight from their cliffside roosts. The mosasaurs dove and rose and dove again through the warm water of the inland sea. Everything was ordinary. Everything was as it should be. Everything was, for one final morning, exactly as it had been for 165 million years. And so, with that gentle picture in mind, with that quiet, sun-warmed world settled into your imagination, we can begin to walk through the last day. The day that began like any other. The day that ended like nothing else. Let us begin at the very beginning, at the first soft greying of the eastern sky. We are standing now, in our imagination, on a low hill in what will one day be called Montana. It is 66 million years before our own time, and the year, if it had a name, would have no name we could pronounce. The date, in geological terms, is the very end of the Cretaceous period, the very last day. Though no one walking this world knows it, of course. No one ever knows their last day until it has passed. The night has been warm, the kind of soft, breathing warmth that feels like a blanket left on a bed all afternoon. There has been a light rain in the small hours, and the leaves of the magnolia trees are still beaded with water. The air smells of wet earth and damp bark and something faintly sweet, the perfume of late-blooming flowers that have opened with the first hint of light. Mist hangs low in the valleys, draped across the rivers like soft scarves of silver. The first sound to break the stillness is not a roar or a cry, but something much smaller. A single insect, somewhere in the underbrush, beginning the soft buzzing song that will rise as the day warms, then another, then a third, and then, gently, like a tide coming in, the morning chorus of the Late Cretaceous begins to rise. Not the bird song we know today. There are birds here, yes, but their voices are different. There are also the soft low calls of small dinosaurs settling into their morning routines, the distant trumpeting of duck-billed dinosaurs calling to one another across the wetlands, the clicking and rustling of countless smaller creatures stirring beneath the leaves. The eastern sky pales, pink seeps into the grey, the mist begins to lift, and then, finally, the first edge of the sun appears above the horizon, a thin curve of gold that quickly grows into a perfect rising disk. Light spills across the world. It catches the tops of the highest conifer trees first, turning their needles bright green. Then it slides down their trunks, illuminating the bark, the moss, the lichens. It reaches the magnolia leaves and turns the water beads on them into tiny burning jewels. It touches the wet earth and begins slowly to draw the dampness up into the air as warmth. A great river runs through the valley below us. Wide, slow, winding, the colour of milky tea from the silt it carries. The water is warm. Steam rises from its surface in delicate threads. On the far bank, a herd of triceratops has come down to drink. They are not in any hurry. They have been here for hours since before dawn. There are perhaps 40 of them, of all sizes. Old bulls with thick scarred frills and deeply curved horns. Cows with calves at their flanks. Juveniles still growing into their armour, their horns still small and slightly soft. They drink in slow rhythm, lowering their massive heads to the water, lifting them again, water streaming from their beaks. The young ones nuzzle their mothers. 2 of the older bulls stand at the edge of the herd, facing outward, watching. They have done this every morning for as long as they have been alive. Around them, the world wakes. A small mammal, barely bigger than a mouse, peers out from the entrance of its burrow at the base of a fallen log. Its whiskers twitch. Its tiny eyes blink in the new light. It scampers out for a moment, snatches a beetle from beneath a leaf, and then darts back into safety. It will spend most of the day underground, as it always does. The dinosaurs frighten it, even when they are far away. The vibration of their footsteps in the soil tells it when they are near. It has lived its whole life this way, as did its mother and her mother and her mother, back through the long generations. A flock of small birds, still quite different from modern birds but recognisably bird-like, lifts from the canopy of a great conifer tree. They scatter across the morning sky in a loose pattern. They have nests up there, hidden among the branches. They have already fed their hatchlings the first meal of the day. Now they are scattering to find more food. Some of them will not come back. The world is full of dangers for small flying things. But for now, on this morning, they fly. Higher still, a single Quetzalcoatlus rises from a sandstone cliff some miles away. The great pterosaur has spent the night on a high ledge, its leathery wings folded carefully along its body, its long beak tucked beneath one wing. As the sun warms the cliff face, it stretches. Its neck unfolds. Its wings open to their enormous span, longer than the wings of a small airplane. With a few powerful flaps, it lifts itself into the air and begins to climb. It is heading for the open plains beyond the river, where small dinosaurs and mammals and other prey can be found in the long grasses and ferns. It rides a thermal upward, circling slowly, until it is so high that anything watching from the ground would only see a tiny dark cross against the brightening sky. Down in the wetlands at the edge of the inland sea, a great herd of Edmontosaurus is beginning to move. There are thousands of them. They stretch across miles of marshy lowland. They feed on the tender shoots of horsetails and ferns at the water's edge, on the soft new leaves of magnolia and willow-like trees. Their flat, duck-like beaks are perfect for stripping vegetation. Their cheeks are full of complex teeth that grind plant matter into pulp. They communicate with low, resonant calls that carry across the water. They have crests on their heads, hollow chambers of bone that allow them to make these sounds. The whole herd is in soft conversation, a constant gentle music of low notes that rises and falls like the breathing of the wetland itself. A few miles inland, in a forested valley, a Tyrannosaurus rex is waking. She is enormous, older than most of her kind. Her name, if she had one, would be lost to time. She has scars along her flanks, the marks of fights she has won over a long life of hunting and competing. She has bred several times. Some of her offspring are nearby, juveniles now hunting on their own. Some have died. That is how it is. She is resting beneath the spreading branches of a great conifer, her enormous head laid along her foreleg, her tiny arms tucked close to her chest. Her tail stretches out behind her, twitching slightly as she dreams. Yes, she dreams. Most large-brained animals do. We do not know what she dreams of. Perhaps of running through tall ferns, perhaps of a particular meal, perhaps of nothing at all, only the slow drift of sleep beneath warm shadow. She wakes slowly. She blinks her great yellow eyes. She listens. The forest around her is full of sound, but nothing is alarming. She knows every sound of her territory. She has lived here for years. She knows the calls of the small theropods that scurry through the underbrush. She knows the low rumbles of the herds at the river. She knows the cry of the pterosaurs riding the thermals. None of these sounds tell her there is anything to fear, so she rests. She does not need to hunt today. She fed 3 days ago, and her belly is still heavy with the meal. She will lie here for a few more hours, in the warm light filtering through the canopy, before she rises and walks to the river to drink. And in the river itself, beneath the warm water, the slow morning life of the wetlands continues. Crocodiles, much like modern crocodiles, lie half submerged in the shallows. They have been there all night. They are warming themselves now in the rising sun, motionless, their eyes barely above the waterline. Turtles rest on logs. Fish move in soft schools through the deeper pools. Small mammals come to the water's edge to drink, careful, quick, always alert. A young triceratops, separated for a moment from its mother, splashes through a shallow ford. The mother bellows softly. The calf bellows back and trots toward her, water spraying from its small hooves. The sun rises higher. The mist burns away completely. The day grows warm. Insects begin their full, mid-morning chorus. The herds settle into their grazing rhythms. The predators rest in the shade. The pterosaurs ride the thermals high above. The mammals stay hidden. The birds sing their strange ancient songs. Everything is exactly as it should be. And nothing on this whole, breathing, ancient world knows that, at this very moment, something is moving through space toward Earth. Something that has been moving for a very, very long time. Something that has crossed unimaginable distances of cold and dark to reach this bright, warm, green planet. Something that will arrive in just a few hours. But we are not there yet. The morning is still young. The world is still itself. Let us breathe with it a little longer. The sun climbs higher. The shadows shorten. By mid-morning, the great herd of Triceratops has finished drinking and has begun to move slowly inland, away from the river, toward the open glades where the ferns grow thickest. They walk in a loose column. The older bulls on the flanks, the cows and calves in the centre. They are not afraid of much. They have not been afraid of much for millions of years. Their world has rewarded them for being large, for being armoured, for being patient. They walk slowly because they have no reason to hurry. A young calf, perhaps 6 months old, breaks away from its mother for a moment to investigate a small patch of yellow flowers. The mother huffs softly but does not chase. The calf sniffs the flowers with its beak, then takes a tentative bite. The flowers are bitter. The calf shakes its head and trots back to its mother. The mother lowers her great head and gently nudges the calf with her frill, the kind of touch that any parent would recognize. The calf presses against her side and walks beneath her shadow. In the canopy of a tall fig tree, a small dinosaur about the size of a chicken is hunting insects. It is feathered, like most small theropods. Its feathers are barred in soft browns and creams, perfect camouflage among the dappled leaves. It moves with quick, precise hops, its head darting forward, its beaked snout snapping up beetles and small caterpillars. It has young in a nest hidden in a tree hollow nearby. Its mate is out hunting elsewhere. They will both return to the nest with food before the sun reaches its highest point. This is what they do. This is what they have always done. Below them, in the soft soil at the base of the tree, a long line of ants makes its quiet way across the forest floor. The ants do not care about the dinosaur in the canopy. They are carrying small fragments of leaf back to their colony. Ants are already old by this point. They have been walking the earth for millions of years. They will walk it for 66 million more, almost completely unchanged. In the wetlands, the Edmontosaurus herd continues to graze. A few of them have waded out into chest-deep water to feed on the tender plants growing along the shallow bottom. Their long, flexible necks reach down into the water. They lift their heads with mouthfuls of green strands. Water streams down their necks and chests. They chew slowly. They are calm. The water is warm. The morning is gentle. A young Edmontosaurus, perhaps 4 years old and not quite full grown, has wandered to the edge of the herd. It is a curious individual. Some animals are more curious than others. It has spotted a particularly tall stand of horsetail rushes, growing on a small island in the middle of a shallow lagoon. It wants to get there. It steps carefully into the water. The water is shallow at first, then deepens. The young Edmontosaurus is a strong swimmer. It begins to paddle. Its tail acts as a rudder. Its head and neck stay above water. It reaches the small island, climbs up onto it, and begins to feed on the horsetails. They are delicious. It is pleased with itself. It does not know yet that it is going to live longer than most of the other Edmontosaurus in the herd, because the small island will, in some strange and accidental way, help it. But that is later. Right now it is just feeding. In the deeper part of the inland sea, a pod of mosasaurs is swimming together in a loose formation. They are not exactly social animals, but they are not exactly solitary either. They tolerate one another's presence. They sometimes hunt the same schools of fish. The largest of them is a female, nearly 40 feet long. Her body the dark, shimmering blue-grey of deep water. She moves with sinuous grace, her long body undulating, her paddle-shaped limbs steering her gently. She's eaten a large fish earlier this morning. She's not hungry, she's just swimming. Below her, in the deeper pelagic zone, a great cloud of ammonites drifts slowly through the water. There are thousands of them. Their spiral shells, some of them as large as truck tires, catch the filtered light from above. They float in the soft current, their tentacles extended, hunting for tiny prey. They have been doing this for hundreds of millions of years. They are an ancient and successful lineage, but this is the last morning they will ever do this. They will all be gone before the year is out. Every single species. The whole great family of ammonites, after surviving every catastrophe the earth has ever thrown at them, will not survive what is coming. But of course, they do not know that. They drift. They feed. They live. Higher up near the surface, a massive pteranodon glides on the wind that always blows over the inland sea. Its wingspan is around 20 feet. Its body is light, hollow-boned, perfectly designed for soaring. It has been flying for hours. It has come from a colony on a distant cliff. It is hunting fish. It glides low over the water, its head turning from side to side. Then it dives, suddenly, dropping like a stone, its long beak striking the water with hardly a splash. It rises again with a small fish wriggling in its jaws. It swallows the fish whole as it climbs. Then it banks and begins the long flight back to its nesting cliffs. In a forest far from the sea, a pack of small dromaeosaurs is hunting. They are smaller than the famous velociraptors of the popular imagination. They are about the size of large turkeys. They are feathered, intelligent, fast. They move through the underbrush with whispering quietness. They have been tracking a young hadrosaur calf that has wandered too far from its herd. They are patient. They will not strike yet. They are waiting for the calf to wander into the open, where they can surround it. If they catch it, they will eat well for days. If they fail, they will simply try again with another. This is their life. This is what they do. The sun reaches its highest point. The shadows are short. The day is at its warmest. Most of the large dinosaurs have settled into the shade for their midday rest. The big T-Rex is still beneath her conifer tree, dozing in deeper sleep now. The Triceratops herd has reached the fern glades and is feeding slowly, with many of the older animals lying down in the soft vegetation to chew their cud. The Edmontosaurus herd has spread out across the wetlands, some of them resting in the shallows, others standing in the soft mud, their eyes half closed. In the canopy above, the small flying things continue to flit and call. The pterosaurs ride the thermals, almost invisible against the bright midday sky. The mammals are mostly asleep in their burrows, waiting for the cool of evening. The reptiles are out, basking, soaking up the warmth. The insects fill the air with their endless soft music. It is, by every measure of every life living through it, an ordinary day. A perfectly ordinary day. There is nothing to suggest otherwise. There is no warning. There is no shadow on the horizon. There is no storm building. There is no sense in any creature that anything is about to change. This is one of the most remarkable things about the last day. It was just a day. It was beautiful and warm and full of life, and entirely unremarkable. The dinosaurs did not gather in some great farewell. They did not feel a tremor of premonition. They did not look up at the sky with strange, uneasy eyes. They lived this day exactly as they had lived 10,000 other days before it. They woke, they ate, they walked, they drank, they rested, they cared for their young, they watched their world, they felt the sun, they breathed the warm air. If you could go back and stand among them, you would see no sign of what was coming. None at all. The trees would still rustle, the rivers would still run, the herds would still graze, the predators would still rest. Everything would feel ancient and stable and permanent. And yet, even now, even at this peaceful moment of the day, the thing that would end it all was already very close. It had crossed billions of miles of cold space. It was now travelling at over 40,000 miles an hour. It was being pulled in by the gravity of Earth itself. It would arrive in a few hours, and the world, this beautiful, breathing, abundant world, had no idea. But let us not rush ahead. The day is still young. The afternoon is still to come. There is still time to walk among the herds, still time to feel the warmth of that ancient sun, still time to listen to the soft music of a world at peace with itself. So we walk, and we listen, and we let the day move on, as it always has, as it always will, until it cannot any more. The afternoon arrives gently. The light shifts. It becomes a little softer, a little more golden. The shadows begin to lengthen, only a touch at first, but enough that the older animals notice and begin to think about the long approach of evening. There is no hurry, of course. There are still hours of light left, but the day is, in its slow and natural way, beginning to turn. The Triceratops herd has finished its long midday graze. They are moving again, slowly, toward a stand of trees where they will spend the late afternoon resting in the shade. Their pace is unhurried. The calves play around the legs of the older animals, sometimes bumping into them, sometimes being gently nudged back into line. There is no danger. There is no urgency. There is only the warm afternoon, and the soft breeze, and the old familiar rhythm of the herd. In the wetlands, the Edmontosaurus have broken up into smaller groups. Some are still feeding. Others have come out of the water to rest on the muddy banks. A pair of young ones is play fighting, lowering their heads and pushing at each other with the soft front of their skulls. They are not really fighting. They are practicing. They are learning the small social negotiations they will need when they are older. Their mothers watch from a distance, trumpeting softly now and then to remind them that they are not too far away. The great old Tyrannosaurus has finally risen. She has stretched her enormous body, opened her great jaws in a wide, slow yawn, and shaken the leaves from her flanks. She is thirsty. She's walking slowly through her forest, toward the river. Her enormous feet sink slightly into the soft loam with every step. The undergrowth bends around her. Small creatures flee at her approach, but she pays them no mind. She's not hunting. She's just walking. Her tail swings gently behind her. Her great head swings slowly from side to side as she walks, her eyes taking in everything, her nostrils flaring softly. She reaches the river. She lowers her enormous head and drinks. The water is cool and clear. Small fish dart away from the disturbance of her tongue. She drinks for a long time. Then she lifts her head, water streaming from her jaws, and looks across the river. On the far bank, a small group of Edmontosaurus is grazing, but they are too far for her to bother with. She's not hungry. She turns and walks slowly along the bank in the warm afternoon light, and for a few moments she's simply an animal in her world, ancient and at peace. And then, far above her, far above the river and the herds and the wetlands and the inland sea, something appears in the sky. At first it is only a point, a single tiny point of light, much like a star, except that the sun is still high and the sky is still bright blue. Anyone looking up would have to look carefully to see it. Most do not look up. The herds keep grazing, the predators keep walking, the pterosaurs keep gliding, the world keeps turning. But the point of light is there, and it is growing. It is moving very fast, very, very fast. So fast that, if you could measure its speed, you would not quite believe the number. 20 kilometers per second, perhaps more, faster than any object we humans have ever sent into space, faster than a rifle bullet, faster than thought, and it is heading straight for Earth. It is not really coming from anywhere we can name with certainty. Some scientists think it came from the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, where countless rocky bodies have been quietly orbiting since the formation of the solar system. Others think it may have come from the outer reaches of the solar system, from the Oort cloud, where comets gather in cold, distant clouds. Wherever it came from, it has been travelling for an unimaginable time, perhaps millions of years, perhaps billions, on a long looping orbit through the dark. It is a piece of the early solar system, a leftover, a wanderer, a traveller that, by the slow chance of orbital mechanics, has finally crossed paths with Earth. It is about 10 kilometres across, about 6 miles, roughly the size of a small mountain. Inside, it's mostly stone and metal, the dense, dark material that makes up the rocky bodies of our solar system. Outside, it is dark, pitted, ancient. It has been struck by other small objects in its long journey. Its surface is scarred with craters from collisions long past. For most of its long fall toward Earth, it has been moving silently through the cold black of space. There has been no air to slow it down, no friction, no sound, only the slow, increasing pull of Earth's gravity, drawing it in faster and faster. By the time it crosses the orbit of the Moon, it is moving at speeds that would shred any human spacecraft. By the time it enters Earth's outer atmosphere, it is moving so fast that the air itself does not have time to move out of its way. This is the moment when it begins to glow. Far above the Earth, at the very edge of the atmosphere, the air ahead of the asteroid is compressed by its passage. Compressed air heats up. The air directly in front of the asteroid is being slammed into it at 20 kilometers per second. The temperature rises almost instantly. The air begins to ionize. It begins to glow. A thin, brilliant white shell of superheated plasma forms around the front of the asteroid. It is, in this moment, a falling star. The brightest falling star anyone alive on Earth has ever seen. Brighter than any comet, brighter than the sun in its corner of the sky. Down on the ground, the first creatures to notice are the ones with the best vision and the highest vantage points. The pterosaurs riding their thermals high above the inland sea, they see the bright thing in the sky. Some of them turn their heads toward it. They do not understand. There is nothing in their long evolutionary history that has prepared them to understand a falling mountain. But it is bright, and bright things sometimes mean something. Some of them adjust their flight, banking gently, drifting away from it. Below them, on the surface, a few of the larger dinosaurs notice too. The great old Tyrannosaurus walking along her riverbank lifts her head. She has good vision. She sees the bright streak in the sky. Her instincts tell her that bright lights are not usually a threat. They are sun or moon or distant fire. She watches it for a moment, head tilted, her nostrils flare. She does not smell anything strange. The air smells the same as it always does. She lowers her head and continues to walk along the river. The light, after all, is still high in the sky. It is not in her world yet. The Triceratops herd does not notice. They are in the trees by now, in the shade. Their attention is on each other and the soft fern fronds in front of them. The Edmontosaurus herd does not notice either. They are calm in their wetlands. The few that look up see only the bright sky and a single bright streak that is, to them, simply a strange new thing in a sky that has many strange things in it. The small mammals in their burrows do not notice. They are deep underground. They are sleeping the day away. The mosasaurs in the inland sea do not notice. They are below the surface. The light cannot reach them. But the ammonites, drifting near the surface, see something. The light bouncing off the bright thing in the sky reaches them through the water. It flickers. It is a strange and unfamiliar flicker. They have no thoughts about it, of course. They are not creatures that think, but they sense it. And in their soft drifting bodies something registers, a change, a new presence, a new shape in the sky above the water. The bright thing is now visible to almost any creature looking up. It has crossed the upper atmosphere. It is descending. It is leaving a long, brilliant trail of fire behind it, like a torch drawing a line across the heavens. It is glowing white hot. Its surface is already vaporizing. Pieces of it are burning away in long streams of fire. The air around it is shrieking, though the shriek has not yet reached the ground because the asteroid is still moving faster than its own sound. Some pterosaurs very high up are now fleeing. They have turned. They are flying away from the bright thing. They do not understand it, but they understand that very bright things, very fast things, are dangerous. Their instincts say move away, so they move away. Some of them will live longer because of this, not much longer, but a little. The bright thing crosses the lower atmosphere now. It has slowed slightly from the resistance of the air, but not enough to matter. It is still moving at over 20 kilometers per second. It is leaving a trail of superheated plasma behind it that stretches for hundreds of miles. The shockwave from its passage is spreading out behind it, but again, it has not yet reached the ground. To anyone looking up in the last few seconds before it strikes, the bright thing is enormous. It is a second sun falling from the sky. It is brighter than anything any creature on Earth has ever seen. It is so bright it casts shadows on the ground beneath it, even though the actual sun is still in the sky. It is brighter than every fire that has ever burned. It is so bright the eyes of the creatures looking at it are already beginning to be damaged. For a long suspended moment it hangs there, falling, falling, falling. The whole world holds its breath, though it does not know yet what it is holding its breath for. And then, with the slowness that vast things sometimes seem to have when they are about to strike, the asteroid reaches the ground. It is not the ground we are standing on, it is far away. It is on the other side of the world from our quiet hill in Montana. It is striking what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. There is a shallow sea there, warm and tropical, full of fish and coral and ammonites. There are low limestone islands. There are seabirds and small dinosaurs along the shores. There are pterosaurs roosting in the cliffs. And then there is not. The moment the asteroid touches the surface of the sea, everything in a vast circle around it ceases to exist. The water is not just heated, not just boiled. It is vaporized instantly, transformed into superheated steam at temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. The shallow seabed is not just shattered. It is melted, vaporized, blown into the upper atmosphere. The asteroid itself, that 10-kilometer wide mountain of rock and metal, ceases to exist as a single object. It is destroyed in the moment it strikes, transformed into a fireball, a shockwave, and an explosion the likes of which the Earth has not seen in billions of years. But that is for the next part of our story. For now, on our quiet hill in Montana, far on the other side of the world, the day is still going on. The strike has just happened, but the news of it has not yet reached us. The shockwave has not yet arrived. The light is just beginning to change. Let us pause here on this strange suspended moment and breathe. In the place that is not yet called the Yucatan, on a warm afternoon along a tropical coast, the world ends in less than a second. Let us tell this part softly. There is no need for fear. Everything we are about to describe happened so long ago that the very rocks have crumbled and reformed many times since. Nothing here can hurt us. We're only watching, gently, from the safety of an unimaginable distance of years. The asteroid strikes the shallow sea. It is moving so fast that, in the first fraction of a second, it does not feel the water at all. The water has no time to part for it. The asteroid passes through the sea as if the sea were not there, displacing it instantly, and reaches the seabed below. The seabed is limestone, soft, warm, rich in carbonates. The asteroid drives into it. It does not stop at the surface. It punches downward, deep into the crust of the Earth, perhaps as far as 20 miles deep, in a fraction of a second. As it does, it transmits its colossal energy into the surrounding rock and water. That energy has to go somewhere. It cannot be destroyed. It can only be transferred. And so, in that first instant the energy transforms, it becomes heat, it becomes light, it becomes motion, it becomes pressure waves, it becomes everything except what it was, which was the slow, patient kinetic energy of a falling mountain. A fireball forms. It is shaped like a sphere at first, expanding outward from the point of impact. Within it, temperatures reach tens of thousands of degrees, hotter than the surface of the sun, hot enough to vaporize anything it touches. The fireball expands at supersonic speeds. The water around the impact site is gone. The seabed around the impact site is gone. The atmosphere around the impact site is gone. There is only the fireball, a small, brief second sun on the surface of the Earth. Inside the fireball, all the matter that the asteroid struck and all the matter the asteroid itself was made of is being transformed. The water vaporizes into superheated steam. The limestone vaporizes into a dense plume of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide and pulverized mineral dust. The asteroid itself vaporizes into a fine mist of rock and metal. All of it is mixed together in the fireball. All of it is then driven upward, blasted into the atmosphere by the force of the impact. A column of fire and dust and steam rises from the impact site. It rises so fast and so high that it punches through the atmosphere. It rises out of the sky, into the edge of space, into the vacuum beyond. It rises hundreds of miles high. It is a pillar of vaporized rock and water and metal glowing white hot at its base, dimming to red and orange as it climbs, finally fading to a dark plume of dust at its highest reaches. At the same time, the impact has carved a crater, a vast, glowing, smoking pit in the surface of the Earth. The crater is over 100 miles across. It is so deep that, for a moment, the bottom of it lies below sea level by miles. The walls of the crater are molten, glowing pools of liquid rock pool at the bottom. Steam screams up from the seafloor as the displaced water tries to rush back in. And the shockwave begins to spread. The shockwave is a wall of compressed air, a shell of force expanding outward from the impact in every direction. It moves at supersonic speed at first. It flattens forests. It vaporizes anything still standing within 50 miles of the crater. It races across the landscape, an invisible wall of catastrophic pressure, leaving devastation in its wake. But the shockwave is only one of the things spreading out from the impact. The fireball, having risen into the upper atmosphere, has begun to throw out material, vast amounts of material, trillions upon trillions of tons of vaporized rock and dust. Some of this material reaches escape velocity. It is hurled out into space, never to return. But most of it, the great majority, reaches a high arc and begins to fall back down. It falls back down across the entire planet. This is one of the most extraordinary parts of the story. The impact threw so much material into the upper atmosphere that the falling debris reached every part of the Earth, every continent, every ocean, every forest, every plain, every place where the dinosaurs lived. The debris fell back as a rain of glowing hot fragments called spherules, tiny droplets of molten rock that had cooled into glassy beads on their long fall back. As they re-entered the atmosphere, they heated up again from friction. They became, for a few minutes, like a global rain of falling fire. Across the planet, far from the impact itself, the sky began to fill with these falling fragments. Within an hour or two of the impact, the upper atmosphere everywhere was glowing red and orange. The temperature of the air, especially at higher altitudes, began to rise. The infrared radiation from all those tiny falling fragments was so intense that it heated the atmosphere itself. In some calculations, the surface air across much of the world reached temperatures hotter than an oven for a brief but devastating time. But let us not think about that yet. Let us return to the impact site, to the moment itself. In the seconds after the strike, the displaced water of the inland sea has begun to rebound. Tsunamis race outward in every direction. They are not normal tsunamis. They are walls of water hundreds of feet high. They move at the speed of jet aircraft. They surge across the warm, shallow seas of the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. They will in the next few hours race across most of the world's oceans. They will smash into coastlines from what is now South America to what is now Africa. They will scour the shores clean. They will leave deposits of debris far inland that geologists 66 million years later will read like a story written in stone. The shock wave has reached its limits in the immediate area. Within 200 miles of the crater, almost everything is dead. Trees lie flattened. Animals lie still. Forests that took millions of years to grow are now ash and splinters. The ground itself is hot, glowing in places, cracked, smoking. The air is full of dust and particles. The sky cannot be seen. It is all dust and smoke and falling fire. But we, our gentle observers, are not in this place. We are far away. We are still on our quiet hill in Montana, 3,000 kilometers north of the impact. Let us go back there. Let us see what is happening to that other world, that distant, peaceful world in the moments and minutes after the strike. On our hill, the impact has not yet been felt directly. It is too far away. The shockwave from the impact is still travelling. The light from it has already arrived, of course. Light moves so fast that it crosses the world almost instantly. So, the bright flash of the impact, that brief flicker of a second sun rising over the southern horizon, has already been seen by anyone looking south. The great old Tyrannosaurus walking by her river sees the flash. It comes from the south, far away, low on the horizon. It is brighter than anything she has ever seen. For a moment the whole world is washed in pale light. Her shadow stretches behind her, sharp and dark even though the actual sun is still shining from the west. Then the flash fades, and the world is normal again, almost. Except that there is now a glow on the southern horizon that does not belong there. A red glow, like a sunset, but in the wrong place and the wrong time. She does not understand. She watches the glow for a long moment. Her great old brain, large for a dinosaur, tries to make sense of it. It cannot. There is no instinct in her, no memory in her ancestors, no learned response in her experience that fits this. She is simply confused. She turns. She begins to walk back toward her forest. Some old, deep part of her, deeper than thought, is telling her that something is wrong. The Triceratops herd in the trees has also seen the flash. Many of them lift their heads. Some of them snort softly. The older bulls move to the edges of the herd, putting themselves between the strange light and the cows and calves. They do not know what to do. There is nothing to charge. There is nothing to flee. There is only a strange light on the horizon. And so, after a few minutes of watching, they go back to their resting. The light, after all, is far away. It is not in their world. The Edmontosaurus in the wetlands have seen the flash too. Many of them have gone still. They stand in the shallow water looking south. The trumpets and calls that filled the air a moment ago have gone quiet. There is a strange silence over the marshes. Even the insects have paused. Then, slowly, the calls begin again, soft and uncertain. The herd does not break. It does not flee. It simply waits, listening, watching. In the canopy of the trees, the small feathered dinosaurs and birds are flying in agitation. They have been startled by the flash. They flutter from branch to branch. Their cries are sharp and worried. They do not know where to go. Eventually, most of them settle again. The flash is over. The world looks normal mostly. But the world is not normal. The world is changed forever. The dinosaurs simply do not know it yet. The signal has been given. The bell has been rung. It is only that the sound has not yet reached us. It is on its way. It is coming. It is moving across the curve of the Earth at the speed of physics, and it cannot be stopped, and it cannot be argued with, and it cannot be turned back. But for now, for these last few peaceful minutes, the world goes on. Let us breathe with it a little longer. Let us not rush. The end, when it comes, will come fast enough on its own. Let us be gentle with this old world in its last quiet hour. The minutes pass. On our hill in Montana, the great old Tyrannosaurus has reached the edge of her forest. She stops. She listens. The forest is quiet. Too quiet. The birds have gone silent. The small things in the underbrush have gone still. Even the wind seems to have paused. She stands there, her great head lifted, her nostrils flaring. She's trying to understand. There is nothing in the air. There is no scent of fire, no scent of predator, no scent of anything strange. There is only the silence and the strange red glow on the southern horizon, and the feeling that something is wrong. She does not know that, on the other side of the world, an entire ecosystem has just vanished. She does not know that the air around her, the warm, familiar air she has breathed her whole life, is about to fill with falling fire. She does not know that the temperature is about to rise. She does not know any of this. She is an animal in her world, and her world is telling her, in a soft, deep voice, to be cautious. So she is cautious. She moves into the deepest shadow of the forest, beneath the thickest part of the canopy, and she stands very still. And then, in the upper atmosphere, the falling debris from the impact begins to arrive. It does not come all at once. It comes in waves. The first fragments, the smallest and the lightest, arrive first. They are tiny droplets of molten rock, no bigger than grains of sand. They were thrown so high by the impact that they have been falling for an hour or more. As they re-enter the atmosphere, they heat up. They glow. From the ground, anyone looking up sees the sky beginning to fill with streaks of light. Thousands of them, tens of thousands, then millions, falling stars, but more than any night sky has ever held. The whole sky, from horizon to horizon, becomes a curtain of falling fire. The pterosaurs in the air are the first to feel the heat. The upper atmosphere is heating up rapidly from the friction of the falling debris. Air that was 50 degrees an hour ago is now 90, then 100, then more. The pterosaurs flying high cannot easily descend. Their bodies, perfect for soaring, are not built for rapid changes in altitude. Many of them simply continue to glide, confused, as the air around them grows hot. Some of them fold their wings and dive. Some of them reach the lower altitudes in time, others do not. On the ground, the temperature is rising too, but more slowly. The first heating is from the radiation of all those tiny falling fragments. They are like a global oven. The infrared light they give off as they re-enter the atmosphere is intense. It heats the lower air, the trees, the ground itself. Within an hour or two, the temperature in the open will rise to levels that no living thing can survive for long. But not yet. Not in the first minutes. The first minutes are quiet and red and strange. The great old Tyrannosaurus, deep in her shadow, feels the warmth growing. The air on her skin is hotter than it should be. Her tongue feels the heat when she pants. She is panting now. She is panting more than she should be, on a calm afternoon, in the deep shade. Something is wrong with the air itself. She does not understand, but she does what every animal does when something is wrong. She seeks shelter. She lowers herself slowly to the ground, behind a great fallen log, and she presses herself against the cool, moist soil. The soil, at least, is still cool. The deep earth has not yet begun to warm. In the wetlands, the Edmontosaurus herd is in the water. The water at first has helped them. Water absorbs heat slowly. The shallow lagoons and channels of the wetland are still cool, even as the air above them is heating up. Many of the Edmontosaurus, sensing the danger somehow, have moved into the deeper pools. They are partly submerged. Their backs and heads are above water, but their bodies are cool below. They are watching the sky. They do not understand it. But the water is helping them, for now. The young Edmontosaurus on the small island of Horsetails, the curious one who swam out earlier, has now flopped down at the edge of the water, half in, half out. Its body is partly cooled by the water. Its head is in the shade of the tall horsetails. It is breathing fast. It is afraid, though it doesn't understand why. The whole world has gone strange around it. The sky is no longer blue. The sky is red and orange and full of falling stars. The air smells of something it has never smelled before. A burnt smell, a smell like a forest fire, except there is no fire that it can see. In the rivers and the inland sea, the underwater life is, for now, untouched. The mosasaurs swimming below the surface are sheltered by the water itself. Water blocks heat radiation. Water blocks the falling debris. The pod of mosasaurs has gone deeper, instinctively, sensing some change in the surface conditions. They have moved into the cool, dim middle waters, where they will hunt their long, slow hunts for several more days, and where some of them will survive longer than almost anything else in the catastrophe to come. The ammonites, drifting in their countless thousands near the surface, feel the change too. Their soft bodies sense the heat radiating down from above. They sense the strange chemistry of the air interacting with the surface of the water. Many of them sink slowly, drifting down toward the deep water. Some of them will live for a few more days. None of them, in the end, will live much longer than that. The ammonites are about to vanish forever. But for now, they drift, and they sink, and they are quiet. On our hill in Montana, the sky is now fully strange. It is red. It is full of streaks of light. The actual sun is still in the west, but it is dim, hazy, behind a curtain of falling material. The whole world has taken on a sickly orange glow. The temperature is rising. The air feels thick and hot, like the air inside an oven that has been left on. The plants are wilting. The flowers are closing. The trees seem to droop slightly, as if they are tired. And in the south, the glow on the horizon has grown brighter. It is no longer just a red smudge. It is a wall of light, a wall of fire. It is the heat of the impact and the falling debris combining into something that looks like dawn, arriving from the wrong direction. It is so bright that it casts strange shadows northward, even though the sun is still in the west. The great old Tyrannosaurus behind her log can feel the heat now. It is on her back. It is on her flanks. The deep shadow of the forest is no longer enough to protect her. The whole air is hot. She rolls onto her side, pressing as much of her body as she can against the cool soil. Her great chest heaves. She is suffering, but she does not know what she is suffering from. There is no enemy to fight. There is no predator to flee. There is only the air itself, which has somehow betrayed her. For some animals, the heat is manageable. For others, it is too much. Smaller dinosaurs with less mass heat up faster than larger ones. Many of them have already retreated underground if they had burrows. Many feathered theropods have crowded into hollow trees and shaded thickets. Some of them are panting, gulping the hot air, their feathers damp with stress. Some, the most vulnerable, are already dying. Quietly, without drama. They are simply lying down in their shaded places and breathing slower and slower and slower. The mammals. Oh, the mammals. The little mammals are in their burrows, deep underground, where the soil is still cool. The deeper they are, the better. The burrowing dinosaurs are similarly sheltered. The crocodiles in the water are sheltered. The amphibians in the wet mud are sheltered. The fish in the deep pools are sheltered. All those creatures whose lives depend on water or earth or shelter are, for this terrible hour or two, much safer than the creatures of the open air. This is the great quiet truth of the extinction. It is not just the fire and the sky. It is who is sheltered and who is not. The dinosaurs, the great open-air dinosaurs of the plains and the forests, have nowhere to go. The shade is not enough. The water is not enough. The forests will, in many places, soon catch fire from the heat of the falling debris. The plains will turn to burning grass. The whole world above ground is becoming hostile. The great old Tyrannosaurus behind her log has begun to drift. She's not asleep. She's in something deeper than sleep. The heat has begun to overwhelm her body's ability to cope. Her great heart is beating fast. Her breathing is shallow. She's hot, and she cannot get cool, and she does not understand why. She closes her eyes. She presses her face against the soil. She does what animals do in their last moments, when they cannot fight and cannot flee. She rests. Let us not stay with her in this moment. Let us turn our gaze gently away and let her rest, and let the long ancient queen of her forest drift into whatever sleep awaits her. She has lived a long life. She has hunted well. She has raised young who will outlive her by hours, perhaps even by days. Some of her bloodline will survive longer than she will. None will survive forever. But that is true of all of us, isn't it? It is the kindest thing we can say about her. She lived. She was. And in the long, long song of her ancient world, her notes were strong and true. The fire of the upper atmosphere does not last forever. The falling debris finishes its long re-entry within a few hours. The infrared heating peaks, then begins to fade. The air, which had grown so dangerously hot, begins to cool again. By the end of the long afternoon of the last day, the temperature has begun to fall. But the world is not the same world it was at dawn. It cannot be. The forests in many places have caught fire. The heating of the upper atmosphere set leaves and dry needles smouldering. From there the fires spread. Across vast portions of North America, Asia and Europe, the conifer forests are burning. Great columns of smoke rise into the sky, joining the dust and ash from the impact. The fires will burn for weeks. Some of them, in places with thick fuel and dry conditions, will burn for months. By the time the fires are done, much of the forested land in the northern hemisphere will have been consumed. But not all of it. There are valleys that escape. There are wetlands that the fire cannot cross. There are higher elevations and cooler regions where the heat was less intense. There are riverbanks and lake shores where the moisture in the air kept the fire from catching. In these refugees, life continues, battered, stunned, bewildered, but alive. In the wetlands of what is now Montana, the Edmontosaurus herd has survived the heat. The water shielded them. As the temperature falls, they begin to move. They climb out of the deeper pools. They look around. The world is changed. The sky is dark, even though the sun should still be up. The horizon glows with distant fires. The air smells of smoke. The familiar scent of the wetlands, that mix of mud and plant and water, is overlaid with something acrid and burning. The herd has lost some of its members, the youngest, the smallest, the weakest. Some succumbed to the heat. Some died from the smoke. The dead lie in the shallow water, and already the smaller scavengers, the fish and the crocodiles, have begun to find them. The living gather. They press close to one another. They make low calls of grief, perhaps, or of comfort. Animals do feel these things. Whether they think about them is another question. But they feel. The young, curious Edmontosaurus, the one who swam to the small island, is alive. Its small island of horsetails, exposed and isolated, was actually one of the safer places to be. The water all around it kept the air slightly cooler. The horsetails, though scorched, did not catch fire because they were too wet. The young Edmontosaurus is hungry now. The afternoon's terror has passed. It begins to feed on the singed but still edible plants around it. It will live for some time after this. Perhaps days, perhaps a week, perhaps a little longer, but it will live for now, and that is something. In the forest where the great old Tyrannosaurus rested, the fires have been mostly localized. There were enough wet patches to keep the worst of the burning at bay, but the heat was still terrible. The Tyrannosaurus has not moved. She lies behind her fallen log, her great body still, her great heart finally quiet. She did not suffer for long. The end came as gently as it could, given everything. Around her, in the underbrush, smaller creatures stir again. The forest, much of it, is still standing. There is still life here. There is just no Tyrannosaurus anymore. Not this one, and in time, not any. The Triceratops herd in their stand of trees have lost some of their number too. The very oldest, the very youngest. Heat stress is hardest on the most extreme members of any herd, but most of them have survived. They stand now in the late afternoon light, which is no longer afternoon light. The sun is somewhere in the west, but the sky is so full of dust and smoke that the light is dim and reddish, like an endless sunset. The trees around them are blackened in places. The air is full of fine ash. The animals are coughing occasionally when too much ash gets into their throats. They begin to walk. They walk slowly, away from the place that has changed so much. They are looking for water that does not taste of smoke. They are looking for food that has not been burned. They are following ancient instincts that tell them to move, to find new places, to keep going. They will walk for some hours until the light is fully gone. And the light is going. The dust and smoke in the sky are now so thick that the sun, when it sets, is not the sharp golden disk it has always been. It is a vague red glow behind the haze. The sunset is strange. It is too red. It is too long. It does not fade gracefully into night. It just keeps going, a smouldering twilight, a twilight that does not end. Across the world this same twilight is settling. From the Americas to Africa to Asia, the dust and smoke have spread. The upper atmosphere is now a global haze. The high winds have begun to circulate the impact ejecta around the entire planet. Within a few days, every part of Earth will be under the same shroud. Within a few weeks, the world will be in something close to total darkness. The sun will not be visible. The sky will be a dim, brownish-grey day and night. But that is the future. For now, on the last day, the twilight has just begun. In the inland sea, the surface waters have become dark. The fish that depend on photosynthetic plankton can sense the change. The plankton, deprived of strong sunlight, are already beginning to slow their activity. The whole base of the marine food web, that great pyramid of plankton feeding the small fish, feeding the larger fish, feeding the apex predators, is about to begin its terrible, silent collapse. It will take weeks, it will take months, but it will happen. The mosasaurs swimming in the cooler middle waters do not know this yet. They continue to hunt. They take a fish, a squid, an ammonite. They are hungry. The hunt is good. They are unaware that very soon the hunting will not be good anymore. They are unaware that they are, in this strange long twilight, already counted among the dead. They will live for weeks more, perhaps months. Some of their kind may live for years, but the great age of mosasaurs, the great age of marine reptiles has just ended. They simply do not know. The pterosaurs that survived the heat have come down from the sky. They cluster on cliffs and high places, their wings folded, their long necks tucked. They are confused. Their world, which has always been a thing of wind and thermals and light, has become a thing of dust and dark and silence. They will try to fly tomorrow. They will find that the sky is wrong, that the thermals are weak, that the prey is scarce. Some of them will try for weeks. None of them, in the end, will succeed. But for now, on this strange evening, they rest. The small mammals are emerging from their burrows. The temperature has fallen. The air is breathable, if smoky. They come out one by one, blinking in the dim light. They sniff the strange new world. They move carefully. They are looking for food. They eat insects, dead leaves, the scattered bodies of small creatures that did not survive the heat. The mammals do not understand what has happened. But they are good at finding food. They are good at hiding. They are good at staying alive in the cracks and crevices of the world. And there will be many more cracks and crevices in the world that is coming. Some of these mammals are the ancestors of all of us. They are the ancestors of every primate, every cat, every dog, every horse, every whale, every bat, every elephant, every human. On this dim and dusty evening, in the smoke and the strange red twilight, they are very small and very quiet. They eat, they watch, they survive. That is all they do. That is all they need to do. Among the dinosaurs that are still alive, there are many who will live for days, weeks, even months longer. They do not know yet that the food chains around them are collapsing. They do not know that the plants they eat will soon be gone. They do not know that the herbivores will starve and that the carnivores will starve when the herbivores are gone. They simply continue to live, in the way animals live, day to day, breath to breath. And so, as the strange long twilight deepens, the world settles into its first night of the new age. It is a quiet night. There are no stars because the dust hides them. There is no moon for the same reason. The fires on the horizon glow. The wind, when it blows, brings the smell of smoke. The animals who survive the day move quietly through the darkness. They eat what they can find. They rest where they can. They are alive, all of them, alive in this terrible transformed world. We sit with them, in our imagination, in this dim and quiet night. We do not need to say much. We only need to be present, to bear witness, to hold space for an ending that no one alive on Earth would understand for 66 million more years. The dinosaurs, the great rulers of the long Mesozoic summer, are no more. Some of them still walk, some of them still breathe, but the age of dinosaurs has ended. It ended in a single afternoon. It ended in a flash of light from the southern horizon. It ended in a rain of fire from the sky. It ended quietly, in the end, in the dark, in the smoke, with the survivors gathering around their lost ones and not understanding any of it. Let us breathe with them in this first long night. Let us be still and warm and grateful for the stillness. The world will keep turning. The night will pass. Tomorrow will come, even if it is dim and ashen. There will be more days. There will be a new world. It will not be the world of the dinosaurs, but it will be a world and in time, in the slow and patient way of all things, life will find its way back to abundance. But that is far ahead. For now, let us sleep with the survivors. Let us close our eyes in the smoky dim and let the long night settle around us. Let us now skip gently forward just a little and walk through the days and weeks that followed the last day. We do not need to dwell on them in detail. They were quiet mostly, strange, dim. The world was changing in ways that were almost too slow to see and yet too fast to escape. The morning after the impact, the sun did not rise as it had always risen. There was no sharp golden disk at dawn. There was no soft pink seeping into the grey. There was only a slow, vague brightening of the eastern sky. The dust and smoke in the upper atmosphere had thickened overnight. The world was now under a global shroud. The light that filtered through was dim and reddish, like the light at the very last edge of a sunset. Across the world, the survivors woke to this dim morning. The Edmontosaurus herd in Montana had moved several miles overnight, looking for clean water. They found a river that ran from the high country, where the impact debris had not yet polluted everything. They drank. They ate from the singed but still living vegetation along the banks. They moved on. The Triceratops herd had survived mostly. They walked slowly through their changed forest. The air was thick with ash. Many of the leaves on the trees were brown or curling. The flowering plants, especially the magnolias, had taken hard damage from the heat. But the herd was alive. They walked and ate what they could and trumpeted softly to one another in the strange dim light. The young curious Edmontosaurus, on his small island, ate his way through the singed horsetails. When the food on his island ran out, he swam back to the main wetland. He found his herd, smaller now, but still present. He rejoined them. The herd accepted him. They moved together in the dim light, looking for food. In the inland sea, the mosasaurs continued to hunt. The fish were still there for now. The ammonites were still there for now. The squid were still there for now. But the plankton at the base of the food chain were beginning to fail. Without strong sunlight, photosynthesis slowed, then almost stopped. The microscopic plants of the surface waters began to die in massive numbers. Their bodies sank to the bottom of the sea, where they would, in geological time, become the dark layer of clay that marks the boundary in the rock record. But the mosasaurs did not see this. They hunted, they ate, they lived. Days passed. The light did not get brighter. If anything, it grew dimmer. The dust kept circulating. The fires kept burning in some places. The smoke kept rising. The world continued to dim. After a week, the temperature began to drop. The sun, blocked by the global shroud, was not warming the surface as it should. Without warmth, the air cooled. Without warmth, the water cooled. Without warmth, the plants slowed. Within 2 weeks, the world was significantly colder than it had been on the last day. By a month, it was colder still. By 2 months, parts of the world were experiencing freezing temperatures for the first time in tens of millions of years. The dinosaurs were not built for cold. They had evolved in the long warm summer of the Mesozoic. Their metabolisms, their behaviours, their life cycles were all tuned to warm conditions. The cold was hard on them. The very young, the very old, the very ill, all began to die. The herds shrank. The pack hunters had fewer hunts to make. The food chains began to wobble. Plants suffered too. Without sunlight, photosynthesis was impossible for many species. Even the hardiest trees began to drop their leaves prematurely. The flowering plants, those young and beautiful additions to the world, took particular damage. Some species died entirely within a season. Others survived in seedling form, waiting underground for the light to return. But here, in this terrible time, an interesting thing was true. Some plants survived very well. The ferns, those ancient and patient plants, were among the survivors. They had been around for hundreds of millions of years before the flowers came. They had evolved during dim, warm, swampy times. They could grow in low light. They could grow in poor soil. They could grow on burned ground. As the larger plants died, the ferns spread. Within months, in many parts of the world, vast carpets of fern were covering the burned forests and the dead plains. The geological record calls this the fern spike. It is a layer of fern spores so thick that geologists can use it to mark the boundary between the age of dinosaurs and what came after. The ferns took over because they could, because nothing else could, because in a world without sun, the patient survivors of an older age came back. The animals that ate ferns did well for a while. There were not many that did. Most of the large herbivorous dinosaurs preferred the lusher conifer forests and the flowering plant communities. As those died, the herbivores starved. The Triceratops herds walking through their changed world found less and less to eat. Within a few months, most of them were dead. Within a year, almost all of them. The young, curious Edmontosaurus, now a full-grown adult, lived for a year and a half before he too succumbed. Not violently, quietly. He simply could not find enough food. He grew thin, he grew weak. He lay down one cold morning beneath a stand of ferns and did not get up again. The carnivores died too. Without prey, they starved. Some turned to scavenging the carcasses of the herbivores. Some turned on each other. Some simply gave up, lay down and let the cold take them. The juvenile tyrannosaurs, the descendants of the great old queen, hunted as long as they could. Some of them lived for over a year. None of them lived to breed. The line ended quietly, in cold forests under a dim sun, with the last few hungry ghosts of an ancient family fading into history. In the oceans, the collapse of the food web took a little longer but was just as complete. The plankton failed first, then the small fish that ate the plankton failed, then the larger fish that ate the small fish failed. The mosasaurs, those great predators of the inland sea, lasted longer than most because they could eat almost anything. But eventually they too ran out of food. Their numbers fell. Their hunts grew empty. Within a few years, almost all of them were gone. The very last mosasaurs, somewhere in the Pacific or the Atlantic, swam quietly through dimming waters, hunting nothing, finding nothing, until they too sank quietly to the bottom and were gone. The ammonites, those beautiful spiraling creatures that had lived in Earth's oceans for over 300 million years, were gone within a few months. Their planktonic larvae, the tiny floating young of their species, depended on surface plankton for food. Without plankton, the larvae died. Without larvae, no new ammonites were born. The adults could live on for a while, eating whatever they could find. But without a new generation, the species had no future. They simply stopped, as a great river stops when its source is dammed. By the time the dust began to clear, the ammonites were already gone. All of them, every species, forever. The pterosaurs, those great masters of the sky, lasted only weeks. Without thermals, without prey, without the warm rising air of a sunlit world, they could not fly properly. Many of them simply could not generate enough lift to launch themselves into the dim, cool air. They stood on their cliffs and walked on the ground and waited. Some species held on for months. The very largest ones, the great Quetzalcoatlus, may have lived for a year or more, but none of them lived to breed in the New World. The whole great family of flying reptiles, after 150 million years of mastering the sky, simply ended. The non-avian dinosaurs all ended too. Every single species, every Triceratops, every Edmontosaurus, every Ankylosaurus, every Pachycephalosaurus, every Tyrannosaurus, every theropod and sauropod and ornithopod, every dinosaur that was not a bird. They all died within a year or two, perhaps 3 at the outside, of the impact. It was the most complete extinction of any major animal group in the history of complex life. None survived. None of their lineages continued. The age of the dinosaurs simply ended. But not everything ended. This is the gentle truth of the catastrophe. Not everything ended. The birds survived, not all of them. Many bird groups were lost. The toothed birds, the long-tailed birds, the strange, specialized birds of the Late Cretaceous, all of them died. But a small group of birds, ancestors of all modern birds, made it through. They were small, they were generalists. They could eat seeds, which lasted in the soil even when the plants were gone. They could dig, they could hide. They were, by accident or by adaptation, exactly the kind of creatures that could survive a long, cold, dim winter. The mammals survived, most of them. They were small, they burrowed. They ate insects, seeds, fungi, fern shoots, anything they could find. They had high metabolisms that let them stay warm in the cold. They had fur that insulated them. They had nocturnal habits that meant they were used to working in dim light. They had been waiting in the wings for 150 million years. Now, finally, the stage was theirs. The crocodiles survived. They had been semi-aquatic, sheltered by water. They could eat almost anything. They could go for very long periods without food. They had been around since before the dinosaurs and would continue almost unchanged. The turtles survived, mostly. Their armour and their slow metabolisms helped. They could shelter in mud. They could wait. The fish in fresh water survived, mostly. The streams and rivers were less affected than the open oceans. Many freshwater species made it through. The amphibians survived. Frogs, salamanders, the early relatives of modern amphibians. They were small, hidden, dependent on water and shade. The New World was not so different from the Old, for them. The insects survived. Many of them. They were small, they could hide, they could eat almost anything, they could reproduce quickly. Plants survived in seed and root form. The ferns spread. Some conifers held on. Some flowering plants persisted in protected places. The world's plant communities were devastated, but the deep underground network of seeds and roots and rhizomes was largely intact. When the light returned, life would return. And slowly the light did return. After many months, perhaps a year or more, the dust in the upper atmosphere began to settle. The fires had finally burned out. The smoke had cleared. The first true sunlight in over a year began to reach the surface again. It was weak at first, filtered through a still thick haze, but it was there. The plants felt it. The seeds felt it. The first new shoots began to push through the ash and the soil and the old burned ground. A new world was beginning. It would not be the same world, it could not be, but it would be a world, and in time it would be beautiful in its own way. Time, in geology, has a way of softening everything. The catastrophe that took a single afternoon, the long winter that followed for years, all of it is now compressed into a thin layer in the rock. A line of clay and ash, less than an inch thick in most places, is all that remains in the geological record of the worst day in the history of complex life. But on the surface, in the breathing world, the recovery took much longer. The world of the dinosaurs did not come back. It could not come back. It was gone. But a new world began, slowly, gently, to emerge. In the first 1,000 years after the impact, the surface of the Earth was still a strange and damaged place. The forests in most regions were dominated by ferns. Vast carpets of fern stretched across what had once been towering conifer forests. The ferns were not very tall, they were not very diverse, but they were green, and they were alive, and they covered the ground. Among the ferns, the surviving plants began to expand. The conifers that had made it through, the seeds that had been buried deep enough to escape the heat, the rootstocks of magnolias and other early flowering plants, all of these began to send up new shoots. They were sparse at first, single trees here, a patch of flowering plants there, but they were spreading. Year by year, decade by decade, century by century, the green of the ferns began to be broken up by the green of returning trees. Animals returned with the plants. The mammals, freed from 150 million years of dinosaur dominance, began to do something they had never been able to do before. They began to grow. The first mammals after the catastrophe were still small. None of them were larger than a domestic cat. Most were smaller. They were the survivors of the dinosaur age, still cautious, still nocturnal, still hidden, but within a few 100,000 years, some of them began to come out into the open. Some began to feed during the day, some began to climb trees, some began to hunt larger prey, some began to graze. Within 10 million years, mammals had radiated into hundreds of new species. There were small ones like shrews. There were larger ones the size of dogs or pigs. There were tree-dwelling ones, the early ancestors of primates. There were swimming ones, the early ancestors of whales. There were hoofed ones, the early ancestors of horses and deer. The whole great family of mammals, which had been so quiet and small for so long, was now spreading into every available niche. The birds too did well. Without the great pterosaurs, the skies were open. Birds began to grow larger. Some became flightless and took up the role of large ground predators. Others became long-legged waders. Others became swift aerial hunters. Within a few million years, birds had spread to every continent and every habitat. They became the new dinosaurs, in a sense. They are the only direct descendants of the dinosaur lineage that survived. Every bird you see today, every sparrow, every eagle, every chicken, every penguin, every ostrich is a living dinosaur. The lineage did not end entirely on that terrible day. A small thread of it survived, and that thread became, eventually, the great singing flocks of the modern world. The reptiles continued. The crocodiles spread back out into rivers and swamps. They became, again, the apex predators of many wetland ecosystems. The turtles diversified. The lizards and snakes flourished in a world without small dinosaurs to compete with them. In the oceans, the recovery took longer. The collapse of the marine food web had been so complete that it took millions of years for full diversity to return. New types of corals emerged. New types of fish, especially the bony fish that we know today, expanded into the empty niches. The marine reptiles never came back. The mosasaurs and plesiosaurs were gone forever. But other creatures took their place. Whales, descended from those small mammals that returned to the sea, eventually became the great masters of the ocean. They are still the masters today. Insects, those tireless survivors, continued their slow expansion. New types of bees appeared as flowering plants spread. New types of butterflies. New types of beetles. The insects of the modern world, that great hum of small life that fills our forests and meadows, traces back to this period of recovery. And the world warmed again eventually. The dust cleared completely. The sun shone bright and full. The temperature climbed back to its old warm levels. For a while, after the recovery, the world was even hotter than it had been before the impact. The early Cenozoic, the age that began with the death of the dinosaurs, was a hothouse. Crocodiles lived in the Arctic. Rainforests grew at high latitudes. Palms swayed in places that are now tundra. The world was not the same as it had been, but it was alive, fully alive, abundantly alive. And in that abundance, in the long warm afternoon of the early Cenozoic, the mammals diversified into all the forms that would eventually shape the modern world. Among them, in a particular line of small tree-dwelling primates, in a particular forest in what is now Africa, a thread of evolution began that would 66 million years later lead to us, to you, to me, to all the people who have ever lived, who live now, who will live tomorrow. That long thread from the small frightened mammal in its burrow on the night after the impact, all the way to the human reading or hearing these words right now, is unbroken. Every ancestor in that line survived the catastrophe and everything that came after. Every single one of them, generation after generation, mother after father, fed their young, escaped predators, found food, kept going. If the asteroid had not struck on that particular spring afternoon, 66 million years ago, none of us would be here. The dinosaurs would still rule. The mammals would still be small and cautious. There would be no humans. There would be no civilizations. There would be no books, no songs, no cities, no quiet voices in the night reading sleep stories to gentle listeners across a dark and beautiful world. We exist because of that catastrophe. We are, in some strange and humbling way, the children of that bad afternoon. And the dinosaurs themselves, those ancient and wonderful creatures, are not entirely gone. They live on in the birds. Every time a sparrow lands on a windowsill, every time a robin pulls a worm from the lawn, every time a hawk circles high in the summer sky, that is a dinosaur. The lineage continues. It is changed, transformed, reduced and refined, but it continues. The dinosaurs are here. They have always been here. They will always be here in some form, as long as there are birds to fly above the world. This is the gentle ending of our story, not despair, not loss, but change. Slow, patient, beautiful change. The world ended on that spring afternoon, and the world continued. Both of these things are true. The dinosaurs died, and the dinosaurs lived. The age ended, and a new age began. Life adapted, as it always does, to what came next. 66 million years later, on a quiet evening with the soft sounds of the modern world all around us, we can look back at that day and feel something like wonder. We can feel grief, perhaps, for the lost world. We can feel awe at the scale of the change. We can feel gratitude for our own existence, made possible by that catastrophe. We can feel kinship with the small, frightened mammals who survived, because we are their children. And we can feel, too, a certain peace. The story has been told. The day has long since passed. Everything that died has been at rest now for unimaginable ages. Their bones, The few that became fossils are gentle stones now, held in museums or sleeping in the deep rock. Their lives, however brief or long they were, are complete. Nothing can hurt them anymore. They are safe in time. They are home. And we are here, briefly, walking through our own days and our own nights, breathing the same air that has been around the planet many millions of times since their last breath. We are, in some strange way, breathing the same atoms they breathed. The carbon, the oxygen, the nitrogen of their bodies, returned to the soil and the air and the sea, has cycled through countless other lives in the millions of years since. We carry, in our own bodies, atoms that were once part of a triceratops, or a tyrannosaurus, or a tiny mammal in a burrow on the night after the world changed. We are made of them. They are made of us. The line is unbroken. The line is everything. So when you think of dinosaurs, think of them not as monsters or as failures. Think of them as ancient relatives who walked this same earth, who breathed this same air, who lived their long ancient lives under this same sun, in their own time. They are not gone. They are simply far away. And in our quiet imaginings, in our peaceful evenings like this one, we can walk among them again, gently, lovingly, and let them rest in our minds as they rest in the deep stones of the earth. Their story is part of our story. Their day was a day in the long, long calendar of life on this beautiful planet, and we, in our own small way, are still writing the next pages of that calendar. We don't know how our chapter will end. We do not know what is coming, but we know from the dinosaurs that even when worlds end, life continues. Something always continues. Something always finds a way. That perhaps is the deepest comfort of this story, that nothing is ever truly lost, that every ending is also a beginning, that the long song of life on Earth is not a song that ever truly stops, but only changes its tune. The dinosaurs sang their part for 165 million years. Now it is the mammals' turn, and our turn within that, and we sing what we sing for as long as we can sing it. And after us, others will sing, and the song will go on. Thank you so much for staying with me on this long journey through the very last day of the dinosaurs. Thank you for letting an ancient world settle into your mind tonight. Thank you for your gentle attention, for your patience, for your willingness to walk slowly through millions of years with a soft voice and a soft story. If you are still awake, let your eyes close now. Let your body sink a little deeper into wherever you are resting. Let the dim red twilight of the last day fade gently into the darkness of the first long night. There is no need to think anymore. There is no need to remember. The story has been told. The dinosaurs are at rest. The world has turned many millions of times since their last breath, and it will turn many millions more. You are safe. You are warm. The night is kind. Tomorrow will come in its own time. For now, you only need to rest. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts soften. Let the long ancient calm of the deep past hold you and rock you and carry you off into easy, gentle sleep. Before you drift off completely, I'd love to hear from you. If you were going to spend a single day in the time of the dinosaurs, which dinosaur would you most want to see? Drop your answer in the comments. Good night, dear listener. Sleep well and dream of warm ancient afternoons. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, as it really helps us continue making more content. Anyways, see you in the next one.